Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Sara Mitchell of Helping Babies Sleep. I'm a sleep consultant. I'm actually a chiropractor by training, but I found my passion empowering parents to teach their little ones to sleep. And if you're watching this on YouTube today, don't forget to hit subscribe to never miss a baby sleep tip. Please feel free to put a comment in if you have a question, because we have a super special guest today. I'm super excited to have IBCLC Sara Boudreau, a lactation consultant from Hot Milk Breastfeeding. And today, together, we're going to talk about how feeding and sleep are so intertwined. We're going to talk about the signs of undersupply and the signs of oversupply, and how both of those can actually impact your sleep. So I'm super excited to have you here today, Sara. Thanks for taking time from your busy practice to be here.
Thank you for having me. It's fun.
Yeah. So Sara herself is a mom of 3 littles. She's also a nurse by training. She's had experience working in the postpartum and floors in the hospital, as well as working with many new moms, helping them on their breastfeeding journey. So Sara, the first question I'd love to ask you today, can you explain to people the difference between, I'm seeing a lot more breastfeeding counselors out there. Can you explain the difference between a breastfeeding counselor and an IBCLC, which is what you are?
Totally. So in IBCLC, we have a little bit more extensive training. We're required to do 1,000 hours hands-on. We have 90 credits through either university or through other online training, depending on the university. And we also have to do more continued education. So our requirements are 75 continued education credits per 5-year span, or we can retest. So like we have to stay ahead of the new products and then, the research and all the things. An educator or a counselor is a little bit less, they don't have to do as much to keep up their accreditation. There's not as much required to start with. I look at it as kind of like dipping your toe into the pool instead of like jumping in. A lot of times it's like the nurses that don't know if they like lactation, or they just want a little bit of extra education to help their own like clients or support groups. They'll start with the counseling or the educator role, and then they'll move on to IBCLC.
Okay. So would it be fair to say like a counselor or an educator has like a general breastfeeding knowledge, but might not be as well versed as like troubleshooting for people who have like a lip tie or tongue tie? Okay. And then you also, it sounds like you're a regulated profession, so you need to keep up on your continuing education, whereas an educated lactation educator or counselor would not. Is that about right?
They don't have to do as much. I think they only have to do 18 hours every 3 years. So it's much less education needed. Continue.
Okay. And I know I even kind of investigated the IBCLC program, and it is super intense. Like you guys have a lot of hours to become so knowledgeable in what you do. So valuable. So
the exam is so difficult. It was harder than my nursing exam, which is, it says
wow. That says a lot. That says a lot. Okay. Yeah, and today we're talking about how feeding and sleep, and so we're 2 Saras here, and I love having Sara on because she's probably my favorite lactation consultant. We think about sleep as being separate from feeding, but they are so intertwined. And what I love about working with Sara and we refer clients back and forth is I feel like we are both pretty open-minded, right? And we don't think that there's necessarily one way that people have to nurse or they have to feed or they have to sleep, that there's a whole gamut out there. And it's really about finding what works for you and for your family, right? So Sara, I know most recently we shared a client where I went for a newborn consultation, and I could see that this is more than just sleep issues, that there's an uncomfortable little baby here. And so why is this baby uncomfortable? And then we lead into the breastfeeding questions. And so I sent this person to you saying, I think this is oversupply. What do you think? And do you want to share what the signs of oversupply are? And the most common ages perhaps too, that someone might see this in their own little one.
Absolutely. So oversupply it's really confusing because the babies want to eat more frequently. They're usually a little bit more fussy. They bite and pull when they're on the breast. So a lot of times moms think, oh, what if it's undersupply? What if I'm not making enough because the baby's not content and not and like seems distracted and pulling when feeding. So the big indicator is between undersupply and oversupply is the baby will kind of pull off and there'll be milk spraying or leaking out. That's a big one. If you have undersupply, that's not, you may have like a dribble or like a drip here and there, but it's not going to be like full force.
Right.
Also weight gain. Undersupply, your baby doesn't gain enough. Oversupply, they're gaining over an ounce a day. And when usually their feedings can be shorter because they're getting full, the flow is so fast for them.
Right.
So it's hard. It's both sides. It's hard because when you're like, okay, I'm going to boost it up if it's undersupply, but oversupply is just as difficult, and it's just as confusing because there's so many different things you can do.
Right. And I feel like we don't really talk about oversupply as much because it is, in a way, it's a better problem to have, right? Because your child is getting nutrients. It's just that they tend to be fussy. And I actually had oversupply with my second. So if you know my story, I've got lots of milk. My son was 20 pounds by the time he was 4 months because I just kept nursing him back to sleep. I didn't know what else to do. In hindsight, I don't know if there was an oversupply issue with him, but I know with my daughter, I definitely had it because she was born 9 pounds, 7 ounces. And then she dropped, 10% of her body weight within the first few days, which I actually think is the anesthetic, like that causes the fluid retention. I think it's just the fluid dropping off. I don't think he was naturally, underweight or anything was going on. But because of that, I had to really focus on getting her weight up. And we just kept feeding on demand, which worked great. The doctor was super proud of me. I got everything back up to normal. But then like a week in, she started projectile vomiting. Right? Because my milk was coming out like a fire hose. That's how I kind of explain fire oversupply to people. It's like, think about your little person. They're trying to drink from a fire hose. They're going to end up swallowing a lot of air. That air are little air bubbles sitting in their GI tract that are making them kind of uncomfortable and squiggly a lot too, right? So I like how, Sara, you see the signs definitely at the breast that, pulling off, wanting to go on, but then coming back off, wanting to go on again. And I see it even later when they're in the crib, kind of like looking very uncomfortable, and the sounds that they're also making.
And their response to discomfort is wanting to nurse more because the sucking is comforting for them. So they go back to the breast and they start eating again, and they're getting fuller and they're uncomfortable. And it just kind of spirals through. So you see reflux, you see gas issues. They're like arching their back. They have frothy poops. Like there's just, it's really hard. It's hard.
The frothy poops is a great one. I did a video on that the other day. Green frothy poops, right, is often caused by, do you want to explain what it is?
Yeah, it's from a foremilk, hindmilk imbalance. So they're getting that initial sugary, like it's more of like a watery sugar consistency milk and not the fat content, or not as much of the fat content. So it's an imbalance. Now, some babies, like if they have one or two here or there, like that's just like a typical like feeding. They could have snacked or not emptied the breast, but when it's consistent and they're uncomfortable, that's a little bit of a red flag for me.
Yeah, me too. It tells me that there's something going on with the feedings, right? And okay, here's another question as we talk about this. So when I have a client, right, my client calls me because they're not worried about weight gain. They're not really worried about breastfeeding. They're tired and they're worried about the amount of sleep or the amount of effort getting a kiddo to sleep, especially in that newborn stage. And so one of the things I always ask is, how often are you feeding them during the day? And what I'm looking for, I'm not looking for a rigid response. But I relate it, again, always goes back to my own story, is when someone said, how often are you feeding during the day? I was like, oh yeah, every 3 hours. Yeah, that's what they told me at the hospital. I'm doing that. And then when I logged it, I was like, oh my God, I'm feeding him like every hour and 50 minutes, right? Yeah. And so I was putting myself into what I call in the book, the Helping Baby Sleep Method, which is available on Amazon that I wrote. I call it the snacking cycle. Right? Your milk comes really quickly. He's probably often more tired than hungry. So he snacks a little and then falls asleep or just falls off. And the snacking cycle is difficult because you get stuck in it. Like you talked about earlier, negative feedback loop. I use that term all the time as well. In that if I snack whenever I want during the day, why the heck wouldn't I think that I could snack whenever I want it at night? Right? And you're not allowing your little person then, or not allowing, I shouldn't say it like that, but your person doesn't have the opportunity to come to the breast, drain one side completely, get all that great fatty hind milk that you just mentioned, take half the other side, and then I have a 3-hour window until I next feed. And then I have confidence that if my kiddo's fussy in between there's something else going on that I need to address, rather than doing what I did was just stick them back on the boob to mute the tears because I didn't know what else to do, essentially. Right. So that's one way that feeding or sleep are intertwined. A very common thing that many of us do is mistake the signs of fatigue for hunger, and then we just keep feeding, and we keep generating that stimulation of the breast, keep that milk supply up, and then that's one of the ways a lot of people fall into that oversupply. Yeah. Right. And then with undersupply, what's your main measure for, like, main signs for undersupply, do you think? And how do you
undersupply? I'll look at how much the mom's pumping, how long it takes to get that milk when the mom is pumping. Usually those ones I'm more warranted to do a in-home consult where we weigh the baby before and after the feed to see how much they're actually getting. In counting the diapers, sometimes they're right on the edge and they'll get the 6 Ps a day, but it's not as consistent or not as much. So there's a couple, like a kind of a panel of questions I talk about with them, but usually we can see it for sure in the transfer of the feed.
Yeah, the transfer of feed. And what do you think about, like, are there any home products that people can weigh their baby before and after to see?
There are really good scales out there. I mean, you can get a Salter scale on Amazon and it's pretty accurate. I don't love for moms to go and buy a scale and obsess about that number, because I feel like a lot of us have that like type A personality where, especially when it comes to our children, we're just like so obsessive. So you can get kind of stuck in that routine of like, I have to see what they took, so it's not the best idea. Even myself, like, it drove me crazy knowing like I can see how much my baby's getting, but there are products out there, and you can even use your own home scale. It's not going to be quite as sensitive, but you'll get a general picture of how much, your baby's getting, for your community.
Yeah. And, now we're kind of dribbling into that postpartum anxiety, which I know I definitely had, and I logged until he was like 9 months, because just the anxiety. For me, it actually helped control it, but I know for other people, it can aggravate it. So you really do have to figure out what works best for you as well. Right. And my experience with sleep, I have an interesting anecdotal story to tell about undersupply. So often people who come to work with me, I've definitely worked with people who have like low storage capacity or low milk supply. It doesn't mean that you can't get great sleep, because sleep teaching is not about taking away all the night feeds, right? That's a misconception. That's an old school approach. But there's different ways that we can work around that. But I do remember in particular one case that I had with a 5-month-old who wanted to sleep at the breast, like using the mom pacifier. And I don't know if you remember this one, because I consulted with you on this one as well a few months back, where nights improved immensely, but during the naps, we could never get them to be very long after a few days. Like, I have benchmarks in my head of where people should be after a few days of working with me. And this kiddo was not hitting that, even though nights were amazing, like accelerated, doing great. And I remember asking, please tell me more about his disposition when you take him off of a feed, right? And he was cranky and kind of uncomfortable and didn't really seem happy. And then the naps just were not improving. And so I said, I think you might have a supply issue here. She said, no. The nurses at the hospital said everything was fine. And then she consulted with a drop-in center where they did the weighing before and after. And sure enough, it had dropped off. So, hunger, this is a whole other topic. How do you know if it's hunger or not in the middle of the night? Yeah. But I think it goes back to any type of sleep teaching. If you're implementing a methodology, like when I implement a methodology, I'm looking for progress in the first 3 days. And if I'm not seeing that, and progress could be less time to fall asleep, longer stretches of sleep, falling asleep in the nap when they never, or in the nap from the crib when they never have done that before, those are progress. But if I'm seeing someone who's still crying an hour every night, not making progress, red flag, stop whatever you're doing. Something's not right. And you have to ask yourself more questions and start being even more of a detective than you have been to figure that out. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Sara, you are such a wealth of knowledge. Where can people find you?
So I do home visits in the San Jose area. I also do virtual consults, but my website is www.hotmilkbreastfeeding.com. And my phone number is there, my email, they can reach out.
Yeah, and I
Instagram.
know you're working on like a cheat sheet or a successful breastfeeding guide. Tell me a little bit more about that too, and we'll post the links to these in the comments as well.
Totally. So on my website, I do have a freebie, and there is a sheet that looks something like this. And it goes over oversupply and undersupply for those that are wondering, and kind of some of the symptoms that moms will see. There's also a guide, which I have for sale. You get it with a consult, but I do have people that purchase it, just to kind of information. And it goes over flange fitting, diaper counts, just a lot of the common questions, like some of the struggles moms have when they're latching their baby.
And what I love about that, Sara, is it's like I don't have to read a whole book. Like you've like made it all so simple. These are the most important things that you need to know. So
that is the last thing you need, is something like to have to search Google or read a book to figure things out when it's like in the moment questions.
Yes, when you're keeping a little person alive. Super stressful.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate all your wisdom and knowledge as usual. And to everyone watching, we'll see you next week.